you are much better off sitting in meditation than trying to figure out whether or not you're doing meditation wrong. See, what needs to be understood is that the value you get from doing the thing, and self-correcting is much better than trying to do it right the first time or getting frustrated with yourself for not getting it right. And I think the most important thing, and well, I think the most obvious and most like the thing people press on is you can't meditate because you can't calm your mind. And even though there's ways to calm your mind before your meditation and people talk about what the point of it is, I would just say that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you can't calm your mind or your mind is racing. Simply closing your eyes and sitting does you wonders. Because the thing about it is you don't get good at meditation by not doing it. You don't get a calm mind by allowing your mind to just go crazy, and have never destimulate. Also, more importantly, as you meditate, your mind just calms down eventually. When you're not constantly giving it stimuli, or if you're doing more focused work, then your mind will start to settle. And that's sort of a key. If your mind is very racy, chances are you're not doing enough like things that keep you present. But also it just means that you just don't meditate enough. Like the solution to being bad at meditation is more meditation. And you're just better off sitting for longer or for more often. The actual sitting session, I don't know if it matters as much as the amount set, but you're just better off just trying to sit, and then you maybe spending that time not meditating or getting lost in thought. That's fine. If you do it again and then again and then again, you'll start to realize something. Through the experience, you'll realize something. And that growth, I think, is important. And that's why I think really how success works, how people end up where they need to go, is that through continuous effort, you gain something, and it may take more than what you think. Sure, you can, how do I put this? You can have a bunch of different skills that you've accumulated over time. And when you do that first thing, technically it's a bunch of other stuff you've already done. But if you're like a beginner with certain skills, speaking skills, when it comes to selling skills, relationship building skills, spiritual skills, it's going to take a lot of successive attempts. And I think people's fear of failure, fear of looking dumb, and there's a specific fear, not just of not being good, but the fear of going through the motions of being good. Like, there's a fear that there's going to be something that's going to cause you some sort of pain that's going to be more or worse than the success. Or even more, there's a fear that success just can't happen. Like, there's a fear that you are like stuck where you are, even though that doesn't make sense, right? You always have to check the fear, check how logical the fear is, how rational it is. How are you afraid of something that's not logical, that can't happen, right? You not changing after successive attempts. You're going to change. Something's going to change in you. You're going to understand something deeper. Now, you can, speed it up by learning other people's methods, applying other people's methods. But fundamentally understand is that you're still doing the attempts, right? Actually, I don't know why this turned into like a sort of self-improvement thing, but I guess it is because meditation, the more I do it and the longer I do it, the more I come out having a sort of realization about like life that aren't like new. These aren't like new, never before seen like ideas. These are very common. But I think what meditation does is it sort of removes a filter on how you understand those things. For example, going back to successive attempts, right now there's this person who's kind of started this trend, and I would say one of the more positive trends of getting 1,000 no's, get 1,000 rejections. So basically, not just like in relationships, but in jobs, in any sort of thing you want, just getting 1,000 rejections. And getting excited about it, because the point is to get experience in rejections to the point to where rejections don't phase you, and also to grow. And I think why those things are so important, this especially in this time of I guess fear and contraction, because we're going through a period of expansion, and because of that there's going to be a first contraction, and we see that like what's going on in the United States, what's going on around the world. There's going to be a contraction as a response to sort of the spiritual expansion, or the expansion of like this energy. I think I lost my point there, but I was going to say is that 1,000 rejections, that's kind of what you do anyway, right? You just do the attempt, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And when you realize that you don't have a limited amount of tries, the mind, and I think to protect you from pain, especially when you were younger, and you grew up, and I can say this from my own experience, where like failure wasn't sort of put as something that's okay. You always, like, if you were made to like have a lot of pressure when you failed, so that way every attempt was way more stressful and had more anxiety inducing, whereas the attempt should be in a very calm, relaxed, even playful state. If you were like put a lot of pressure on succeeding this first time, even though like you definitely did it multiple times, even with the education system, if you had a very specific type of parents, right, who wanted to see success at an early age and wanted to see a savant, and they didn't really promote the idea that you have to grow and learn, and it takes time, like very impatient parents, a very impatient society, which we have, a very rushing society, then you start to learn to be afraid of failure. You will learn to be afraid of doing things in public, of doing things at all. And you end up never really growing in any capacity. Maybe you have a few things that you're good at and that you become really attached to. But even those, you don't really get as good. You don't really get as good when you're not out there constantly trying and quote unquote failing, or what I would like to say learning. Each time is learning. Each time is a learning effort. Each time you get 1% better. Especially when you have like sincerity. I think people sometimes also like, people want to know if they're doing it right? Even if they're failing, they want to know if they're doing right. There's an obsession in, am I doing this right? Because you want to see progress in a certain way. Now, that's not wrong. It's good to be like, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, that's actually part of the process. And I think you'll do it naturally when you get interested in investing in something. You're interested in, okay, well, what can I change about this? What can I do that really can put me to this next level? Those are good. But I think what happens a lot is people do a few and they're like, oh, this isn't working. And then they realize they're trying to do something, they're changing, and they don't give themselves enough time to just feel it out. Really, with so dusty in here. Hold on. You probably can hear some construction out there, but it was very dusty. I needed to breathe in some breathable air. Yeah, a lot of times what you're going to need is not 10,000 hours, but really thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. You're going to need a lot of time in something to really come to understanding. And the thing about it is that there is no top end. What it looks like in this infinite universe is that there's an infinite way of progression. We like to believe there's a max. But really, when you really understand the human potential, there is no top end. What happens in a specific society that likes a convenience and expediency and profit over a lot of stuff, and it's not that you can't make profit, it's just that the overvaluation of it typically ends up cutting corners or making artificial ceilings, because to expand, it's funny, to expand out infinitely requires some constraints, right, that end up, I would say, being removed because of the desire for something to just kind of be its best, be its perfect, be the end. But there is no end. There was this TikTok about what is heaven like from a perspective of this specific Christian theologian, right? Not your typical Christian who thinks about it, but he liked to believe that if God is infinite and that therefore there's no end. He would like to believe that heaven is a place where you gain infinite knowledge of God, because you wouldn't be able to just know God completely, right? And that learning, or from his perspective, learning will never end, and there's an infinite growth. And there's something about that. There's something about that belief that like seems almost in line. Well, like sure, there's like limits in certain religions, but I have a belief that like there might be infinite levels of different variations. Because for example, there's these infinite multiverse, infinite parallel universes of who you are. I'm not surprised there might be infinite growth. That this is just, but we have such a limited thinking that we think of the top end as this is it, especially in a materialist idea. This is it. This is all there can be. This is all there is. And I genuinely believe that the more spiritual you get, the more spiritual understanding, the more you understand there is no end to this. There is no final destination. You keep going. And that's the point. Unless you stop. But eventually you're probably going to want to keep going anyway. I don't know what this rant turned into, but I'll just tie it off. Don't limit yourself. Don't feel like you're limited. And the only limit you will have is the limit that you put on. You are the only one limiting you. And if you just understand that, then hey, you can do whatever you want.